Good. We are live. Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, today we are speaking about how to be a mom while also being connected to your sensual and your sexual energy. So, when it comes to being a woman, there's many different sides that we can connect to. There's different sides of the feminine. As we move through life, we naturally connect with these different sides because life is giving us that opportunity. Like when we're a child, we can really explore that energy. When we are a teenager, we start to be connected with more of the sensual energy. We start to move into our adult life and we start to build a career. And then there's this moment that we become a mom. And when that happens, this energy and transformation is really strong because not something in our outer world is changing, but actually something really changed inside our body. So what I've noticed while working with women is that a lot of women find it really difficult to connect with the other sides of the feminine while that mother energy is so strong. And I'm not a mother, so I cannot speak about this, but I known Natalie for quite a while, and she's one of the very few amazing mothers that I know that I just don't notice that she's a mom. So how is that for you? Because I remember you told me like I've always separated this really from the start.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can say that I've been through a big transition in my motherhood, but even before that transition, I remember it always being important to me to not be that mom that comes to her friends, to her single friends, and talking about all of my breastfeeding issues and my I really was mindful from the beginning. I wanted to actually see my friends and separate my life from everything that I've been going through as a mother and just actually dive into another world, dive into the juice and the fun and the things that I missed and wanted more of. Of course, I didn't separate it completely, and I did have things that I needed to share with my friends and wanted to share with my friends too. But it wasn't, I noticed myself as a mother speaking to other mothers who could only talk about their children, and that would irritate me, and seeing how that was in me, I began just to completely give myself in another way to my friends, and I still don't like to be around mothers that just talk about the kids. Like I really like to see beyond and see what's inside and see how's your relationship and your passions and your lifestyle and go into many other subjects. So what I like to receive, I became then and now.
Yeah. And this is what I notice so much being in your presence and having you as one of my friends is that I like often forget, oh wait, you're like, she's a mom. And what I see so much of you is actually your sensual side and your passion and your creativity, like these other, and your playfulness, like these other sides of the feminine are so blend in with Natalie. And this is what really inspired me to interview you today, because I feel that this is something that a lot of women would want. And in a way, it's really safe to be in that energy of the mother, especially if we look at, and I'm talking with my hands, so just using my hands, especially if we look at the more sensual side that we have as a woman, or the seductress, or like this, the part of us that is connected to their sexuality. In our teenager time, this part immediately gets suppressed. This is still, we can say,
like before motherhood,
even when we're a kid, like the first part that we receive clothing is over our genitals. It's like, hey, that part should be covered. So that part is already doesn't get the full space to allow it to be expressed. But then when we move, like not we, because I haven't explored this part yet. But then when I see women moving into the mother energy, it's even an easier excuse. It's like, oh, then I just leave sexuality and sensuality on the side because now I can fully drop into the motherhood, because that might feel more safe than allowing your sensuality to express.
Right.
Yeah. So I would love to dive into that part, because I can imagine that when you first have the birth, your body is moving through a lot. Where and I remember you expressed to me that it wasn't like that in the first year.
The first years.
Yeah, but at a certain point there was a breakthrough for you.
Right.
What happened?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. For me, it wasn't really a matter of age that was the significant time of my transition. It was a place of where I was in my life. So I remember that my daughter, she was going through some physical not illnesses, but she was having these signs of physical something. You know, she was losing her eyebrows, she had a lot of phlegm in her throat, she was suffering from coughing a lot, and nothing major, but I noticed that something was happening inside of her that I wasn't sure what it was. So I took her to an acupuncturist, and you know, first of all, we checked all of the main signs. You know, how is her food, how is her life, how is this, and slowly, to take it really down to the root, I understood that she had an emotional breakdown or something that she was going through, and I was looking at my life, at how that could be influencing her. And I noticed, after a lot of research of, you know, my relationship with my husband, and is it because of he and I that she's suffering, or just me, and I understood eventually that she's very much affected by my happiness. And that was a big breaking point for me. It wasn't even me and my husband, or it was just me. And I mean, I always knew that the children, they know everything. You know, I come from education of children, but I still thought that I could bypass that, and that I'm a really good liar, and she would not understand from me my pains, my sadness, the things that I've been going through. And then I got this slap on my face, and I saw that actually she really does notice everything that is going on inside of me. And that was a really big shift for me. I really got a big slap in my face, and I made the decision that day that in order for me, my main priority was her and her happiness, and understanding that that is reliant on my happiness. And then I became my own priority for her in the beginning. But you know, that was the beginning, and then obviously I traveled into the journey of myself and saw how empowering and enriching that was for me and for her. And that was like coming a bit later, but the beginning, that transition, was knowing that if her happiness is based on my happiness, I need to find my happiness. And then more things happen. Yeah.
So as I understand it, basically what you're saying is, before you were holding yourself back, perhaps in more different areas of life, but also in that aspect of perhaps not being so connected with your sensuality and with that part of your life, and actually seeing how that influences more because you're holding back.
Right.
But then also that's the example that you give to her.
Right.
Versus if she sees you like connected with your sexuality or with your sensuality at that point, that inspires her to also open and feel. And
at that point, I didn't know it was sensuality that I was seeking, actually. So it was that happened through what I began to do. I was like, okay, so I will take you into the little journey that I had, and that was the first thing that I knew that I loved and wanted to do was to dance. I was dancing Latin dance for a long time, years and years and years ago. And I knew that this is something that I've always wanted to do. So I found my first passion that died a long time ago. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start this. And this is when the Latin dancing came into my life. And in sensual Latin dance, you know, sensuality is something that awakens in you. Now, you can dance sensually on many levels. It could be a very superficial level and, you know, enjoy the playfulness of dance. But for me, I noticed as I was dancing my insecurities. And I so much wanted to be a good dancer that I knew that to look good on the dance floor, a place where you cannot hide if you love yourself or not, I decided that I need to meet all of these old stories of not getting chosen for the prom and being rejected and da 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 da. Like a lot of stories came up in me, and I met them until I could really feel like I love myself. And I was on that dance floor, and I was like, pah. It was like amazing moment of me just giving all of myself and not afraid to be that, to be sensual, to be shy, to be sad, to be everything, and not just even to be sexy. Sometimes I was not feeling sexy, and allowing myself to be that. It was like a lot of self-love, self-value, self-worth came up in my dance. And that translated in my life, like this feeling of, you know, the sensual dance. It's like it really tickles everything inside of you. And that's when I began to feel sensual in my daily life. Like it started off very much on the dance floor, and then I would leave the dance floor. It was like a cut.
Yeah.
And eventually, you know, I did a lot of courses coinciding in Tantra and other things. And I learned what is sensuality and how I can be sensual when I'm picking up the fruit from the table, you know, and in my house and in everything. And this was like the beginning of me being sensual. But I separated that from my daughter. In the sensual dancing, I used to be watching the videos all the time, and sometimes she would want to watch them, and I'd be like, no, like that's too. I felt like she's watching a porn movie, you know. It's like, I was like, I don't think you're too young for that, you know. And only when I really came to understand what is an empowered woman, that was the message that I began to give her. You know, I felt like sometimes I was dancing too sexy for her, and maybe she'll get the wrong message. But eventually through my journey, I understood that actually I am the safest message to give to her on what is healthy sexiness. You know, not what they see on MTV with these women and da 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 da. Like there was so much shame, or even for me, fear on what she would consider to be sexy when she gets to be however old. And I was like, I am the perfect example of what I think is sexy and how to be proud of that. Yeah.
Amazing. I was just thinking, is there like something else that pops on that I want to continue asking on that? But I just want to summarize actually what you share, because we're looking into like, okay, so how did you started to shift that? And what I understand from you is like, okay, first it's like finding a passion outside of your motherhood. For you that was dancing, but that can be any form of creativity, because creative expression is related to the feminine energy. So finding a passion outside of your mom, outside of your relationships, outside of that energy of like, I'm here for my kid or for my kids, and then actually allowing that not to cut it, to separate it, but allow these to merge into melt. That's how I understand it.
Yeah, physically it was like time constraintly, like I was getting comments by people. You know, I was out a lot more than I had been. You know, a few times a week I was out 1 hour from my house going to dance for a few hours, and in the outside that looked like irresponsible parenting. You know, she's really scattered, what a mother, blah blah blah. And inside me I knew different. And yeah, I heard all of these comments around me, but my intuition was so strong at the time, and my determination was so strong at the time. And I've never been a person to actually listen or care about what other people think too much. Like if it's truth inside of me, it's usually the way that I go by. But I remember hearing those comments and thinking, wow, like I could see how it looks on the outside.
Yeah.
But I also knew that and still know that without this, I needed to sacrifice some time with her. But the reason
was actually an example. It's for her benefit.
And to show her what is like, if I wanted her to be a kind of mother, it would be this. A kind of wife, it would be this. Take your time, live your passions, like never give up. And who am I to teach her something that I cannot be myself? And so it was like, okay, everything that I would want to teach her to be as an adult,
you're living by example.
Yeah, show it yourself, be it yourself.
And how are you doing that now? Because this is now because obviously I haven't met you in those years, this is now what I see is you connected with your sensuality. Sometimes I see you together with your daughter, other times like we meet alone. So how are you now switching relatively like quickly between those two energies?
I don't switch.
So explain that.
I don't switch. I'm the same person. And that was, again, another transition. In the beginning, there was a separation. Who I am on the dance floor, I just put my shoes on and I become no mother, no wife, no nothing. I'm like fully there, dancing and being myself. And so there was a dual life that I was living at some point. But now I merged a lot of my worlds. I was the kind of person that had many different groups of friends, and with every group of friends I was another face. But these months, these years, I've been actually merging all of that, and everything that I am, she knows. She knows that. And I really think that it's this is the teaching, to be all of that.
So to actually not separate but be that in front of you.
I have become a very sensual person with everyone, with my friends, with myself, it's a lifestyle of mine. And so it's with her too. And there's something that I want to transmit to her, is the safety on being able to touch a friend and be there, be vulnerable, be like, all of this is the same thing. It's like, it's just one language that you can't translate in so many different ways. And that's what I want to teach her. So I will be that as much as I can. And I'm not just living just a sensual life. It's many things I can be.
But it includes, sensuality includes so many things. Sexuality being one aspect of that. And you shared to me a few stories that for me set a really beautiful example on then, okay, how do you start to teach or show or connect with your children on the topic of sexuality, sensuality, body image. The first one that I really love is the one regarding the yoni altar, but I don't remember the story fully, so I'd love for you to share it, like how to deal with, teaching or educating or showing or parenting your kids when it comes to sexuality.
So that's a really cute story. And before that, I will say that nudity was a thing that nudity in the house was something that we were from the beginning. It was never something I needed to explain. Like, I really made this conscious decision for me and my husband was this place of body image. And
so nudity was normal in the house.
Yeah, it was very normal in the house. I remember she and he, they would shower together, we would shower together. It was always nothing, and questions would come up like very naturally, and I would answer them very, very naturally. And when we came here to Kopangan, I remember going to the nude beach, and I was wondering if I should take her with me. Like it wasn't always just like, this is the world. I went through many stages on the openness, and I remember one of the recent stages we went through was taking her with me to the nude beach, which I didn't for the first few weeks. I was like, when we with Elia, we will go to another beach, and when we are together, we can go to the nude beach. And eventually, I understood through speaking with some friends how amazing it is to teach what is real body image. You know, like on off screen,
just priceless. Yeah.
And that was my first, you know, taking her there for the first time, and the second, and the third, and the 16th, and I just saw how slowly she became a lot more comfortable with her body. And then that leads me to the story, which was that I have this altar near my bed, my yoni altar, where it has my toys and my mirrors and, you know, a lot of things. And one day she came and she picked up the mirror and she started looking at her body, and like she instinctively went and looked at her yoni with the mirror. She's just like examining it, and I was on the bed with her, and I looked at her and I was like, yeah, I do that too. She was like, really? I was like, yeah, I do. And she just continued to examine. It was just like such a flawless moment. Like I didn't make it into anything. Like if it was reversed and it was my family, my mother, it would have been very different, I assume. But it was just so beautiful for me just to hold space and see how natural it is. Yeah, like look at your yoni. This is something that I do too, and so discover yourself.
And this, I like how many women have never really properly sat with a mirror and looked down there and look at her.
I was 37, babe.
Yeah.
I was 37 years old the first time I did that.
Yeah. So it's amazing that how old was she when that happened?
7.
Yeah, amazing. That's again, it's like not making a big deal out of things.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the second story that I think is even more inspiring, and especially when it comes to teaching around sexuality. Mm-hmm. So tell us about it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Second story. So yeah, this happened a couple of months ago, and I bought this gun. It's like a massage gun, like a real massage gun.
A real one,
like, you know, really for massages.
That's what it's made for. That's what it says.
Really for massages. And yeah, so her friend was over, and this massage gun was on the table, and her friend took the massage gun and she was, you know, playing about it on her body, and then it's vibrating very strongly, and she just took it and she put it on her yoni, and she was like, oh, this feels nice. And I was just like, that feels nice, doesn't it? She was like, yeah. And Elia, my daughter, she was like, let me try. And she took it and she started you know, putting it around her body, and like went basically straight to the yoni, and just saying, she's like, that feels really nice. And I just looked at her, and in my head, I was imagining it reversed. I imagined me being that girl and how my parents would have reacted to me. And I just kind of looked at them and I said, yeah, you know, enjoy. And I just left. Amazing. I left them to play, to do what they wanted, like it was the most natural thing. It was the most natural thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I just left. And then, you know, after a few minutes, they got bored of it and went to play. And I was like, it was a moment of bliss. Not bliss, like I feel like I fixed generations of our upbringing before me. And that was a really, really beautiful moment for me as a mother. Like, yeah, I am doing it differently. I want to do it differently, and I am. And I feel like this is a really positive part of something that I really want to transmit, something that I didn't have, that I'm learning about myself now in my age, and for her to have this gift of openness from now.
Yeah, because it's exactly those little messages that we have received, because this is where it starts in childhood, these messages where it's like, you know, you get reacted like, hey, don't do that in that moment, or like, hey, that's, you know, put that away, you can't do that here. Like that would have immediately created an imprint that like, ooh, like my yoni, this body part, like this, I shouldn't do that, I did something wrong. And then when they get into the teenage period, that memory, even though they might not consciously remember it, that memory is still there in the subconscious mind.
And we've had moments like that, like, you know, when she would just touch herself, and you know, when she was at a certain age, and that was fine, but eventually that there was a point when that was happening everywhere, you know. And I remember needing to put a boundary there and saying, look, I think it's really beautiful and pleasant and pleasurable to touch yourself, but I think that you should make sure that your hands are clean, and you know, be in a private space. And there was a journey of, you know, going into nursery and showing her body, and so easily, so freely. There was a point where it was too free, and I did feel like I wanted to put boundaries, but without scaring her.
Exactly.
I wanted to put boundaries for her own safety, but without needing to put any shame on any part of her body, that anything that she's like, I even made it very extreme to show her how okay it is, but there is a but, you know. And like, you know, people, I started using words like, this is your temple, and she's like, Mom, what are you talking about, you know? And she still doesn't understand that, but I know that as the years go by, she will already have
that message of like, hey, this part of my body is my special
temple. It's like, special. Exactly. So I think that she doesn't understand everything that I'm transmitting to her now.
But it's making an imprint.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think this is something just popped into my mind. Yeah, exactly. When you're saying like, hey, you're putting boundaries, because unfortunately we have to do that not because we shouldn't be that free, but it's because the society that we're living in, unfortunately, cannot, like, is just not meant for us yet to live so free. So the boundaries are actually for her protection, because it can attract unwanted attention or anything. So, but to put it in a way of like, hey, what you're doing is not wrong. What you're doing is really beautiful. But it's like, keep that, you know, make that special. That gives such a different energy than like, hey, you like, don't do this in public, because like, it's such a different message.
I really agree with that. Another thing that comes into my mind while you're talking is that I never have the talk. Ever. It's like the wisdom that I'm passing on, it's in very small messages in all of our moments, you know. It's never like, okay, Elia, we need to have a talk of where you are in your life right now, and this means that. Never. It's like things happen very naturally, and as those moments arise, then I like inject this piece of information, this piece of wisdom, this tool, this idea. Like it's a consistent lifestyle. Every time I see something alive in her or in me, and then I would just be, oh, you know, something I share about myself, very, very nonchalantly, like very just matter of fact, and we change the subject immediately. It's like a passing conversation, and this passing conversation leads to that passing conversation, and this is something that I do as a lifestyle. It's not like a moment.
Yeah.
And another thing is that I always, somebody said to me once a really wise sentence that I really love, which is, I don't know if I can remember the whole way, but what she was trying to tell me is that everything that you need to explain at one point, don't do. So when I did Easter, and one of the things that came up in one of my rituals there was that one thing that I did hide from her, like I'm very open, but one thing that I did hide from her was my blood.
Oh, wow.
And it was very, very interesting what happened there, because she sees me in the toilet, she sees me in the shower, she sees me in every situation. But when I was bleeding, I never showered with her, and I never let her in the toilet with me while I'm changing my whatever. And there, I instantaneously understood that this is not a conversation I want to have one day.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And that day, like,
not something you've been hiding the whole, and
no,
then suddenly,
yeah, like,
it's like
that's a conversation that
yeah,
I didn't want that.
yeah.
And I was away. I was in Spain for 10 days, and the day that I got back, I got on my period.
Wow.
The day that I got back, and I remember that I went into the toilet, and you know, I was changing my pads, and then I left the door open. And so maybe she'll walk in, maybe she won't, I don't know. And obviously she walked in because she's not going to give me some space. And she's like, Mom, what's that? And this was like one moment in my life with her that was so enriching. And I began to tell her that I'm on my period. And, you know, I told her that a little bit of the biological thing that's going on in my belly right now. And she was like, can I see? Because my pad was clean. And can I see the blood? I was like, yeah, you can see it. She goes, oh, yeah. It looks a bit scary, doesn't it? She's like, yeah. But I tell you that because I'm on my period and I'm feeling a really under the weather, I'm not, this is how it makes me feel. Okay, that was like a quick, 10-minute conversation, and
yeah.
left. Next period came a month later, and I was a bit snappy. And I was like, Elia, I'm on my period. Just leave me alone, like I really need some time. She was like, oh, you have the blood. Okay.
Wow.
And then it was like, it was so amazing. And the moments, like now, it's I changed my tampons in front of her. Everything is very open, but I'm so thankful that I broke that, and that it's not a conversation I need to have when she's 10.
She already knows.
Yeah, and she sees me, and she sees my mood swings, so she will know that her mood swings are fine, and she sees, like, I'm so alive next to her. I'm so authentic. Today I was crying, and she looked at me. She's like, Mom, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm a bit sad today. She's like, is there anything I can do? She gave me a hug, and I was like, no, I'm just sad. And maybe we'll talk about it later. But it was just like to be authentic, and this is the message I want to give to her.
With that, with everything that you share, I feel you're giving so much permission to her, because this is the big thing. Like, so many children, or like a lot of women my age now, have this thing of like, oh, but my emotions are not allowed, I need to like suck it up, I need to behave in a certain way. But if you are in front of her and show all of yourself and your authenticity, again, this is just being the coolest mom. living by example. And I feel that's so important for your own health and well-being, not having the feeling that you need to hide, which I feel a lot of women have.
Right.
Whether that is to parts of our body, to our sensuality, to our sexuality, to our menstruation, which are all so many topics covered in shame.
Right.
By you being authentically yourself, you inspire her to be the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that very strongly. And I will share one other huge transition that really shifted my perception as a mother. Was again in Easter, and up to that point, I think Elia, she was 6 at the time, and she's a daddy's girl, and that really pissed me off. And I was like, it was really frustrating for me, because I felt like I was giving so much of myself, and she's still a daddy's girl. Like, I was really jealous of this love that they had, that it was different from our love. And but when I was there and I had a very deep experience, and I noticed and realized that the gift I have to give her is the biggest gift anyone can ever give any person, and that is the journey of the heart. The journey of this whole emotional journey that we go through especially as women, but even as boys and girls, but giving her this, it's like this, words are leaving my head, but
well, it's an emotional awareness. It's an example.
Learning,
Being in much more than that. Being in touch, feeling that it's allowed. You give her permission.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This
all
journey,
the language of the heart, basically.
And this I'm really good at. Yeah. Knowing my heart. We are actually the same star sign. She was born a few days after me, and so I understand her. I really feel her sensitivity more than anyone. And I know that I have a gift in me, which is just emotional holding her emotions, letting her deal with it, accepting them, accepting the pain, accepting the sadness, being with them, not trying to change them, like all of this world around emotionality, which is huge. That's my gift to her. And as soon as I understood that the gift is so big, all of this jealousy that I had of her being daddy's girl, it disintegrated. And all of this need of me needing to be a cool mom, like take her to the best things and show her the best things and the best experiences, that all vanished. It all vanished. And our lifestyle is very simple. We don't do like so much amazing super mom stuff.
But you're living on a tropical island.
Living on a. But that's also limiting for a child. It's like true. I don't have all of the things that I have in Israel, taking her to the circus and the this and the that and the zoo and the. I don't have nothing. Our lifestyle is very simple. It's going to the beach, which she hates, and the pool and her friends, and the pool and her friends, and it's not so. It's not so like all of the super moms on Facebook. They're like, oh, look what I did with my child today. Look what I did with my child today. And all of these crazy ideas. And I'm like, oh, maybe I need to do more. Like, these are feelings that really come up in me. But the minute that I understood what is the essence of me as a mother to her, at least for me personally, all of this noise just disappeared. Yeah, it disappeared. Like sometimes it pops up. I'm like, maybe I should give more effort or whatever. But
we are human.
Yeah, like it pops up sometimes. But I always know that my biggest gift to her is that emotional intelligence, teaching emotional intelligence.
And I feel that this is because we can take the children to so many places. But ultimately, it's that connection is what creates her whole adulthood, because everything that we learn and we experience in our childhood, the how we are as an adult, like all the shadow work that we're doing now, and like the things around like working on ourselves, are all things that have been formed in childhood.
Right.
So this is more important than anything else.
Right. Yeah. And I really feel that.
Yeah. Amazing. I feel that's such a beautiful transmission that you get right there.
Yeah, it's powerful for me too.
I asked everything that I wanted to ask you. The only thing that I'd love to hear is there any like concrete tips, because we might have women that are watching this that's that are not in that energy yet, where that maybe they're hearing you and they're like, oh, just to also be like connected my sensuality in front of my kids. It's just like, that may sound really scary. Or maybe there's this question like, how can I even do that? Like how, because sensuality is connected to sexuality, like how can my child also see me as like a sexual being? Like what could be some tips that you could give to start melting and merging this more? Or any tips related to what, like the things that we spoke about?
Let's see. So a few things come into my mind, and I guess the first thing is to just check in on your happiness. Like, where are you at with your relationship with yourself? Like, do you have a place inside of you that is separate to your family, to your relationship, to your children? Do you have something in your life that is yours and only yours, a passion, an hour a week where you're doing something just for you that's not related to parenting in any way, or relationships or therapy or anything, like something purely for your passion.
Mm-hmm.
So that would always be a first check-in. Like, what are you doing for yourself? Are you because so many of my friends that are mothers, the full-time mothers, you know, they really struggle with finding 1 hour a week to themselves. And you know, some of them, I'm speaking to them for months, maybe years, and they're still not being able to choose themselves. And it's really a matter of choice.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that she cannot physically take, but they have an hour spare and like, okay, I'm going to fold the dishes, I'm going to fold the washing, do the dishes or whatever. You know, it's like, it's really a matter of choice. So the first step is to choosing yourself. And you know, mine started with 1 hour a week, but very fast escalated. Now 1 hour a week with
but because you saw the importance and the effects of that. And this just to say is not only for the relationship with the child, but also for the relationship with your partner, because you know, there's a lot of polarity that starts to be stuck, or relationships that maybe don't flow so well. Like, this is always the number one polarity tip that I give.
Right.
Yeah, right. To also for your relationship, it's like, find a passion that is outside of the relationship, that's outside of your family. So that's not only beneficial for you, your child, your partner is going to be very happy with doing that too.
Yeah. I think it's really like the first most important tip in life for anyone. So that in itself is a huge thing. It usually opens more and more doors. It's like, okay, you take one step and then you realize more and more about the things that you once dreamed and things that you once wanted to be and do. So that's a whole subject in itself. For me, there's two things that come into my mind. Is one, my dress, how I dress, because that was something that transitioned very much in my motherhood.
That's a very good point.
And second is my dance. So how I dress, I think me as a woman, as a married woman, when I was married, I had like a limitation. Like, I always had this sexy vibe about me in some way, but still it took me a long time to really wear you know, I really love belly tops. I wear them all the time now, and going through my body image issues, but still loving that and really being able to be that and wear it fully without feeling any uncomfort. What I noticed in my dynamic with Aliyah is that if I'm doing something with 50% sure, like I don't know, slightly unconfident about something, she sees it straight away. And so I realized that everything that I do, I am doing fully. If I'm going to choose to wear this, I'm going to do it and wear it with all of my, this is what I want to wear right now. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, this was just my relationship with her, was my relationship with myself, with the world, like going out and wearing what I wanted to wear and being too much. Which now I'm so happy to be too much of everything, but for many years I was so afraid of being the too sexy, too beautiful, too connected, too looking in the eyes, too tempting, too, and I ended up like not being able to look at people in the eyes because I was afraid of being too much of everything that was really alive in me at that time. And breaking that it obviously affected my relationship with my daughter, but it reflected on the whole world. This allowing myself to be what the hell I wanted to be and wear what I wanted to wear. And
again, give an example doing that.
Yeah, I mean, that this is the example of just owning it, you know, and she sees that I own it. So she sees that I'm not doing it for her or to try to prove to her something. I'm really like this, you know. And the second thing was with the dancing, you know, obviously learning Latin sensual dance, I always like to come home and practice. And I noticed at one point that I wasn't dancing as sensually as I wanted in front of her, because I was afraid, because she imitates everything that I do. And I was like, no, I'm just gonna, run it down so it's not so. And I ended up installing in my bedroom huge mirrors on my wall. Like the whole wall was just a huge mirror. And I started dancing, and eventually I came to the understanding of what I said in the beginning, that this is the expression of healthy sexiness. That I could be really all this and sexy and whatever, but then I could like just go crazy and like do the most stupidest, silliest dance with her, and that would also be fun and good, and just like allowing myself to be. And then she used to see me dance, which was again another, seeing me dance with other men that was not her dad, very closely, very sensually, very, very, very connectedly. And it was hard for her in the beginning to see that. And I just, it was just like a normal thing. I just kept it to be normal.
Yeah.
And now she sees me dancing out live, and she's like, wow, you dance so amazing, Mom. Thank you. I see her doing all these things.
The head rolls.
And I'm like, wow, yeah, you dance so good. And she's an amazing dancer. She's a dancer.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was like just another piece of embodying myself in a way that I could express it to her, and just be.
And I think this part of what you said, like allowing it to be normal, not making a big deal about it, because of course there is the topic around like, your children imitating what you do, and then they might take it to the outside world.
Right.
But then if you come with this attitude of, no, this is normal and this is healthy and this is respectful, like that energy will also not be around it. That's what, at least that's my impression. It's 100%. Like, because they're just like, they're child and they're in that, and it's like,
yeah, it's true. And as the ages come by, there are things to pay attention to. And I'm working through that year by year. And yeah, I still have nervousness for the teenagers for sure, because that it will consistently changing, and every time another year goes by, and then I feel like I'm constantly seeing she's at, and by seeing where she's at and how open or closed she is, this is how I will understand what is needed. And if I need to give any structure to something that I think is scattered, then when I do it, it's without an inch of shame or fear, just a kind of protection that it has to be.
In your words, either watching live or going to catch the replay of this, to